Can you describe what life was like growing up?
Life, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and my neighborhood, I grew up in the house my mother was raised in. So I knew everybody in my neighborhood, everybody knew my family. So it was I couldn't do anything. So if I did something and it happened way down the street, my mother knew about it before I came home. And so and then my father was raised across the street. So I had it, both my grandparents right across the street. So in a way I felt watched, but also felt protected. And it came in handy because as I got older, I began to see kind of the bad side of my neighborhood, and the gang activity and really drugs. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and at that time in DC, drugs was a huge problem. I actually lived 3 doors down from what was considered a crack house. I think it was, I can't remember what year of the school, what age I was when they finally busted up. But I would have to walk down the street, and in the morning you would see the belts and things in the yard that people used the night before. So, and it's a really interesting neighborhood because they're homes, people own them, but drugs hit that neighborhood really bad, in the 80s. One of the things that I remember the most in terms of a horrible experience, all the neighborhood children, we actually watched one of my neighbors commit suicide because he was high. So that's how bad drugs was in my neighborhood. And these were people who had owned homes, and their folks, their parents had worked hard to get these homes. It was the kind of neighborhood where you saved up your money and black folks could get a nice house in a nice neighborhood. But then when drugs hit, things just went sour for a lot of people's families and things like that. So the one way it was very familiar. Another way, I did grow up at a time when drugs was drug infested. But at the same time, it was, I loved my childhood though. I mean, I had a backyard to play in. I had friends, I had family, all accessible. And my teachers lived in my neighborhood. The elementary school was in the neighborhood. My junior high school was in the neighborhood. So everything was just kind of like around me.
Okay. How did your childhood education influence your political views now?
That's a great question. Even starting with elementary school, I had incredible teachers from day one. And these were teachers they were veterans. Like most of my teachers have been around and teaching for years. In fact, my music teacher, my math teacher, my 3rd grade teacher, and my Spanish teacher had all taught my mother and my uncles. And so these were people who knew me, were invested in me, and really gave me a foundation. Like my music teacher, she was a performing artist herself. So she made sure we all had top music education. And with that, she opened my eyes to not just, we sung choral music, but I learned about opera, I learned about jazz, had a full range of artistic education. And when you listen to music like jazz, and when you listen to, like for example, Billie Holiday, you listen to Billie Holiday, or you listen to Mahalia Jackson. I was introduced to Mahalia Jackson very early. You begin to understand what it is to be an African American in the United States. I remember distinctively in elementary school, my music teacher talking about Mahalia Jackson singing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial because she wasn't allowed to sing at Carnegie Hall, which is the top place for any artist to make it to Carnegie Hall. You've done the best. And she wasn't allowed because of racism. The Daughters of there's a whole organization that still exists, completely denied her being able to sing there. And I learned that when I was in 4th grade. And so from there, I went on to my junior high school. Like I said, it was in my neighborhood. And all my teachers knew each other for some reason. I could talk about one teacher with the other. And then I went to Duke Ellington School of Performing Arts, and I had to audition to get in. And there, it just kind of solidified, one, I knew myself very well. I think the best thing about my education is that they taught me my history. You know, I had a teacher, I took Charlene Beaumont, African Studies in high school, opened up my whole world. And it was the first time that I really, all of the things that other teachers were trying to say, but in subtle ways, she said it outright. And she brought me the books. I read about Egyptian history. I read about, you know, what happened before slavery. I became more aware of why I was confident in who I am and my ancestry, and why I didn't understand why some people weren't. But the thing about my education, one, it was integrated, or interdisciplinary, I should say. Like I was always involved in the arts. I remember I did, for a chemistry class, my teacher allowed us to do anything we want. And I remember I wrote a song and did a dance for a chemistry project. And so that's the kind of teaching I had, with people who were really open to their talents. They nurtured you, they understood you, they sat you down when you were wrong, they built you up when you were right, and they rewarded you for things that you did. You did the right thing, you got recognized, and you were appreciated, and you were shown the way. Last thing I would say, I think my teachers, and I'm looking back on it, were all the ones that came out of the civil rights generation. Like, there was a civil rights era, really kind of ended around the 70s. Okay? And all of my teachers in DC was kind of like the place where people went to when that fight down south kind of ended. You know, the bus boycotts and things like that. My teachers were the ones that were trying to find something to do, a way to be politically active after that hardcore movement. You know, there were no more buses to fight for, no marching and things like that. They were told to go into education. So those were my teachers. And I think that's what influenced me the most.
Okay, so can you tell us when and how you became politically aware?
Okay. When I was in ninth grade, I joined a group called DC Youth Ensemble. Really, it was the summer before I went to ninth grade. And I was always a dancer. And so this particular group was performing arts, acting, singing, dancing, you name it. And we did a show, we did two shows. One of them was called, it was about Black Panthers, Black Panther Party. And so she was the kind of person where if you were going to do a piece, you had to understand what the piece was about wholeheartedly. And we weren't getting it. We were saying the stuff, and we were doing the dances, and we weren't really feeling it the way she wanted us to. We thought we were. You know, who were we? We were young. We don't know anything. So one day, she took us in a small room. She had actually got our parents involved. We didn't know this. But she turned off the lights. We didn't know it was our parents. She turned off all the lights, and she made us all stand back to back in a room. No lights, no nothing. And our parents and our parents started throwing eggs, and the whole experience that you would have had if you were really living through the boycotts in the civil rights era. They gave to us wholeheartedly. They held nothing back. We were niggas, we were nothing, we were this. And at first it was kind of like, okay, this is a joke. But after a while, when the lights are out, and you don't know who's saying anything, and there are eggs being smacked in your face, they were spitting on us, they were doing the real deal. And after a while, we got scared, because we didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know who it was that was saying what, and then the things that they were saying became very personal. And so, after we left, we spent almost 2 hours just crying. And I think not just because of what was said or done to us, but the fact that, oh my God, this is what people did and lived for real. Like, we can walk out of here and our parents can hold us and they can say, we're sorry, we just wanted you to know what it was like, that kind of thing. But I think what stuck with me was like, these people love us and they were trying to show us something. But there are people who lived through that and people hated them. And so that might have been one of the first times that I began to really think about, okay, what kind of world do I live in? And why is it set up where certain people have and other people have not? And it's deeper than, oh, they just hate you because of your skin. I became really aware of that when I was in 12th grade, that this really isn't about skin color. And I think that's when Ms. Bomar started introducing me to people like Dr. Ben, reading Dr. Ben's work, Sheikh Anta Diop, just beginning to understand that this whole setup has a lot to do with more with money and resources than anything else. And it wasn't about the way I look or the way other people look. And it was more about who wants something and how they're going to get it. So they have to put you down, and they have to keep you down in order to get it. And I think that opened me up too to understand that it wasn't just about African Americans. You know, when I got to college, one of my mentors, she's Afro-Puerto Rican, as she said, you know what I'm saying? And just listening to her story. And then college opened me up too, and I was prepared, I think, because I really knew myself. But in college, I had a friend who was Irish, and when I listened to her family's history, I said, okay, this is deep. This is much deeper than I thought. And I think just the people that have come my way have been so smart. Like, they don't just look at the world and accept things as they are. They're